First pair of flip-flops in like 5 years.
I noticed that.
Convenient.
Target.
Yeah, convenient. I like it. Slide them on. Getting my feet out there. Just it's more like a marketing move. Is kind of what I'm doing. It's kind of like a
Probably work better once they get a little more sun on them.
like a drug dealer that gives you the goods, and then same kind of thing that I'm doing.
I think you have to hold it up for the camera now.
My feet.
I don't do
I don't know if I can get my foot up that high, honestly. It's a good-looking set of feet, if we're honest. Good-looking set of feet.
You will never be more comfortable with feet until the
Pretty
day
comfortable with feet
until the day that you train in jiu-jitsu.
I'm not gonna. I don't.
But I'm just saying, like,
You get them in your mouth and
it's
stuff.
still weird.
You're like sucking guys' toes.
Pretty much. No, but you'll be like working certain positions like Norman Plata, and it's like all right, now
working positions and sucking guys' toes.
Put your
That's what
foot
you're
like
doing?
right against their face, and it's like it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. We all talk about that. Like, we realize how weird this is. Like, a bunch of grown men and women just entering a room being like, we're gonna wrestle. It's very
Yeah. Well,
So weird.
that's why I don't. Yeah.
But with your foot fetish, I think that you would really
I
like
don't
it.
have a foot. That's what we'll walk.
You
this
talk
back.
about feet a lot.
I do not. No, I don't.
A lot.
Walk this back. I don't have a foot fetish. What I have is beautiful feet, and people desire them, and they like pictures of them. I've had several people stop me on the street and say, "My goodness, your feet," and I say, "I know. It's God's gift. It's
And
my
it
gift."
never dawned on you that it might be because you've owned 4 pairs of shoes in the last 5 years.
Why do I need to buy a
At
bunch of
most,
shoes?
that might even be too much.
I have owned more than that. What do you mean? I got shoes.
Yeah.
I just have wonderful feet, and I'm not going to shy away from that anymore. Is that I've been hiding them from the world, and they're ready. I don't know if the world's ready for them. They're big. They got bigger. I got bigger feet now. So is that normal? Is that a thing that happens?
So since you started running,
Just in general, I think in general they're bigger.
my feet genuinely grew whenever I started training for the ultras.
I'm like legitimately 13 now.
Yeah, I went from, well, I was wearing size 10.5 shoes, and now I run in size 12.5, and my street shoes are 11.5 or 12, depending
I think
on
like my street
the
shoes are
brand.
like a 13 now.
But I don't think that I went from a 10.5 to an 11.5, 12. It's just that I was
Your
wearing
size
shoes
wrong.
that were too small, and I thought something was wrong with my toes because they hurt all the time. This is God's honest, true story. And
You're a silly bitch.
once I like jacked my feet up whenever I first started getting into hills to train, it was like, that's one thing. People like seem to accept the fact that there's all these, like, I'll see people that do an ultra and then they'll do the post afterwards of their feet and their toes are like black. Like,
Your shoes didn't fit.
That's not,
Or you didn't cut your toenails right.
it just means that you weren't in the right footwear.
Yeah.
Like, and I get it. Like, someone could be like, whoa, you haven't done whatever, but it's like,
100, yeah.
but 74 miles with 16,000 feet of climb and descent, not 8,000 and 8,000, like 16,000 and 16,000. That's, if your feet are gonna, there would have at least been the beginnings of my toes being absolutely jacked up. There wasn't, my feet were perfectly fine at the end of that. However, in my initial like training runs in the mountains, I was wearing size 11.5 shoes, and I got like the black toenails, and then they like, your toenails get super super thick,
Yeah,
and
I've
this was
lost-
only from like weeks of being in shoes that were too small, not even months, weeks. And I was like, something's got to change, and I went up a whole size from 11.5 to 12.5, and then never again did I have any toe issues. And someone might be saying, well, your foot's going to slip around too much, you're going to get blisters. I have a lot of evidence to say otherwise. I think if you tie them correctly and you have on good socks, you won't.
Got my
But-
shoes tied up. That's good. No, I'm proud of you for that, man. I've lost all my toenails before.
From,
Hiking, yeah. My boots didn't fit right.
yeah, say it's still a footwear issue.
Literally every fucking toenail fell off. I took my shoes off. All of my toenails
Instantly?
were purple by the end of the hike. And
I thought you said they fell off right away. I
they
was like,
called
dude.
they called me old blue toes for a little while. My friends did. So make sure your shoes fit right. But the
Especially-
thing is, I've rebounded. Feet are beautiful again, just lovely, picturesque.
I would say, especially if you want your Future and only feet.
Only feet. Don't be telling people my shit, man. That's my shit. I would do it. Like if I knew I don't know, make extra, like, I don't know, if it was like $1,000 a month, I would do it. I'd sell pictures of my feet. Think I could make $1,000 a month selling pictures of my feet?
I think you would need to have different like things lined up. Like it would be like you
have to be for sure
stepping on like a peeled grapefruit, and it would in slow motion. You stepping on it, and it's just coming up through your toes.
Yeah, this does sound good.
Yeah, I think that would really sell.
Like Jell-O, maybe strawberries. Just me kicking things, just like slow. Like, I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. Maybe I should. Here's what we need. Everybody that's listened to this, all 6 of you, I need you to respond and tell me if you would pay $5 a month for my Only Feet page.
Well, it'll be more what the feet are doing, not just what they look like.
Yeah. What are the feet doing? That's the tagline, actually.
What are them feet doing?
Yeah.
What them feet do.
Yeah, so that's something to look forward to.
I could see the T-shirt line, everything.
There's this place in Oakdale, California. I think it's in Oakdale, called something's House of Beef, and we made this joke of it was like Todd's House of Beef. It was like a very confusing place where like you come hungry, you leave horny, or like you you just sweat the whole time. I had this whole T-shirt line figured out for Todd's House of Beef, and it was fucking hilarious. Yeah, it was maybe not for you, but for us in the car at the time, it was very, very funny. So anyway, do you want to talk to me about stuff?
Not really.
Endurance?
Not really. We're going to talk about why your endurance...
Why yours sucks, I can tell you.
Why your endurance is plateaued.
Yeah. I think it's mostly because people just don't understand training intensity. I think it's mostly it. The biggest issue is people train based on feelings, and so like they need something to feel at least like a little hard for them to feel like they're getting anything out of it, and so they just run harder than they should all the time. And what happens is you overdevelop an aspect of your energy systems that has a very low ceiling. And so you get the adaptations that you need from it very quickly, and then you just keep battering into those adaptations, and they're not going to move because they don't need to, because first of all, they happen quick, and their ceiling is low. And so there's no reason for your body to adapt any further than it already does. And so that's mostly what happens is people just think they're training hard, but they're not actually training hard. They're in a weird heart rate zone that overdevelops their glycolytic system, and they don't have an aerobic system. The aerobic system developed in a way that they should, and so they just plateau really fast. And so one of the ways that we've seen that, I'm going to talk some shit now, is like when people go to places like Orange Theory, because all of their adaptations at Orange Theory, like whatever zone they say you're in, essentially you end up in like fucking zone 3, because you can't maintain the intensity that they want you to maintain for as long as they want you to maintain it. It's just not going to happen, whether that's from internally in one session or as you build fatigue throughout the week. And so you overdevelop that energy system and you plateau very fast. So like you see people go there and maybe they haven't done anything like that before, and they make really fast gains, and then they plateau, and they're like, well, what the fuck happened? And that's exactly what happened. So that's like the first thing that typically happens. I mean, why their endurance plateaus.
Yeah. I also think we see in here sometimes there's like an avatar. Specifically, there's 2 people in here that are like identical in this regard. They've just always been doing the same exact thing for years and years and years on end. And I don't care what you're doing. If you're always doing the same exact thing, of course you're going to plateau. So there's also like you could have been doing the right things, but if you're like, yeah, I've been doing like the lower aerobic base building work, but then if that's all that you do.
Oh, you need higher end stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing is like you need to actually do high intensity training,
Yes.
not get into the weird, messy middle place. And that's where a lot of people fuck up. And it's also, in a lot of cases, more isn't better, but in some cases it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another thing where it's like if you're doing 30-minute sessions of zone 1 and zone 2 work, that's great. And if that's what you have time for right now, please do them. But like at some point you got to do longer duration stuff to really get the adaptations that you want from that. Because essentially what you're doing in that that training zone, those 2 training zones, we'll say from a fuel usage standpoint, is teaching your body to use fat better. And so if you only have short duration sessions, short duration sessions, then you're only, that's pretty good. If you only have short duration sessions, then you're not going to develop that energy pathway to its full potential. So you got to get out and do longer shit. So sometimes that's like 90 minutes or on the north side of 90 minutes and consistently. And you'll start to get faster. You'll start to be more efficient because you have to train your body to use fat. And if you're doing super well-fed 30-minute aerobic sessions all the time, you'll get better for a while, but it's only going to take you so far. Like you got to do some longer shit.
Yeah. As an aside, before I forget, did you see Jason Coop? Did you see the post that he's done in the last couple of days?
I don't follow him, actually.
Okay. So he's done some posts in the past couple of days that for me were like jaw on the floor, and it leaves me with so many questions.
What?
Because he just exposed spring energy gels.
What do you mean?
So there were some people on TikTok who were like, yo, these gels do not have 180 calories. And so they did some
Did he do burn tests?
They did some testing, and it wasn't remotely what they said it was. So Jason bought some, but then had them delivered, not even to his house, and then sent them off, had them delivered directly to a testing lab. And that lab came back with the official, like, here's what we're working with. And it was like 16 grams of carbs and like 70-ish calories.
So they've been ripping people off, man.
Bro, it says they're 180 calories. But why I say that leaves me like utterly confused is it means that I didn't get nearly as many calories as I thought I did doing the Georgia Death Race. It's popped in my head because you just said about like being fat adapted.
That's it. I mean, it's that, and it's like you had, but that's just also, there's 2 things there.
I had the stroopwafels too, though.
But there's 2 things there, I think, is one, yes, like you were probably, your metabolic flexibility was probably really good. And so metabolic flexibility is your ability to switch between fats and carbs as fuel, for people that don't know that. But also, like, that's you believed you were getting 180 calories.
That's
like,
crazy.
So like that's, your mind will do that, dude. Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, I would have, and it would depend, but I would do like one of those and I say stroopwafel, but like the Stinger waffles. But, and in my head, I was like, I'm getting this many calories on like this interval. And like, no, you weren't.
Yeah, that's fun. I think that's great. I don't know.
And all of them. It wasn't just the first one they tested was the awesome sauce.
Is that the things that we use for the marathon?
Yeah. The first one they tested was the awesome sauce. And then they tested the other 2 that they have. I have all of them. Then they tested the other 2. The flavors in the other 2 are so bad. I can't stomach them. They're just terrible. And, but those tested absolutely piss poor, way off from what they're claiming. And so he did a couple of reels where it was like a direct like call out to them, like, hey guys, like,
saving money. That's what
but everyone
doing.
was like, yo, we need to test all the gels, like,
fuck yeah,
because it was just because some people on TikTok called them out. But it's like, test them all. Is this going to be like across the board everyone is lying about what it says? Because it's like supplements aren't regulated
by the FDA.
So yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah,
but is that not food? I don't know.
I don't know. Where do you draw? I don't know where you draw that line. I don't know shit about that.
It's supposed to be like rice. I forget what the ingredients are. Rice and applesauce.
Well, I mean, all supplements are supposed to be
Yeah.
from natural sources. Otherwise, they're a drug.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's wild. I think that's great. But I don't know where.
But you were saying about I it just popped in my head because you were saying about being fat adapted. And doing things for a long time. So you left off on 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think getting on the north side of 90
90
minutes, like consistently,
Yeah.
I mean, accruing total time of zone 1 and zone 2 training is good.
But we're talking like one session.
In one session.
Of not,
extendedly
to be clear.
staying in those periods, in those heart rate zones for a long period, because you just have to train those pathways. And also, I mean, of the other adaptations that you get, which we've probably beaten to fucking death on this podcast, is you increase your cardiac output, you increase your stroke volume, which will increase your cardiac output, you increase your mitochondrial density, and you increase your capillary density. And so all of those things it help with oxygen and nutrient transport, and so, and removing waste, removing carbon dioxide and things like that. So that's to really, like, I mean, I don't know if there's much else to say for most people to understand this. Like, you just, to be able to develop your fat energy pathways, you got to spend some time in those heart rate zones, and it's slower than you think.
Yes.
Like, I honestly, I think for most people, man, there's just so much. I was doing some looking today because I was going, I'm rewriting some stuff and looking at heart rate zones, and like, there are just so many people that don't agree on what they are and where they start and where they end, and, you know, and stuff like that. So it's just such a messy thing for people to understand. But I think for the most part, like, trending down is probably the better call, because, like, I was looking at uphill athlete stuff today, and their zone 1 is like 55 to 65%. No, it's like 55 to 70%. And then their zone 2 is like 70 to 80%. Zone 3 is 80 to 90. Zone 4 is 90 to 95. And then on the north side of 95 is zone 5.
What was their zone 2?
Up to 80%. Which I think is too high.
No, that's way too high.
Which I think is too high. So
way too high. I think when we did the testing, I do think that mine, I know we're like, we want to redo yours because it was wonky, but I think that mine went well and is where I would have expected it to be. And it was like what I kind of predicted. It was like 140, 138, 140, somewhere in there. Down. So this is saying that it would be 154, and there's just no way. There's no way. So like that final stage, my heart rate, the highest it hit, I could go back and pull it up, I think was 142, but the majority of that was in the upper 130s. So
your average is like 140.
Yeah.
So but that's seated.
Yes. Yeah,
so
yeah.
It could be.
Still, there's no way 154 standing now.
I don't know. I might be closer to 150. I don't think it's 80%. I think it's 75% is probably closer.
Most of what I've read is about 5 beats higher from seated to standing.
Sure. So, but I don't.
So maybe 145, which would be almost dead on to the MAF tone.
Yeah, and it's all to say that, like, different zones, different companies, different people zone things differently. But
you said about, like, it's err on the side of, like,
but you
lower.
but you do have to get your heart rate up a little bit. So, like, from what I do understand, like, below 50% isn't really high enough.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's got to be at least like 55% of your max heart rate. But the thing is like, that's also convoluted because that's going to shift with your fitness level. Like, if let's say you go out and you do something and you're out of shape and your heart rate hits fucking 200. Well, it's not like you should be spending most of your time at 140.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you should be doing lower stuff. So those things have to be accounted for. But I mean, a ton of work in zone 1, which for most people is going to top out at like 125, 130, something like that, if I'm doing my math right in my head, which I might not be. So let's say you have a max heart rate of 190, which would be.
So I put in 193 because
that's what yours is. Yeah, mine's like 190.
It was like 135 was the top of zone 1 by their formula.
Times point. Yeah, times 190 times. Yeah, so like 125 would be like, is where 125 to like 115 to 125 is by their formula is what would be something like mine. So based on the testing from last week, I did. I took Monday and Tuesday off this week with being away, but came back Wednesday and did a zone 2 session, and I spent average heart rate was 133
Highest I hit was 140.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is that I did go higher. Before, I was trying to stay below, at all costs, stay below 135. And so I was like, all right, let's just try and stay around 135 to 140. So average come out to 130.
And for most people, like smack dab in the middle of zone 2 to even towards the top of it will be fine.
Yeah.
Because you're still going to develop your aerobic system and aerobic power, even some from doing that. Whereas like people that are like world class or like even super duper fit people, they have to toggle the bookends even more. Like they have to stay in zone 1 and sometimes in zone 2, but more in zone 1 and then higher intensity stuff because of they can cause a lot more metabolic damage in their zone 2 because they can work so much harder than normal people. But for most people, zone 1 and zone 2 is going to be like an even blend is going to be fine. But just I was talking to somebody last night and they're like, I've been running it. It's because I'm saying this because there's just so much confusion about zones. He's like, I've been doing my running from like 155 to 160. So I've been staying in zone 2. I was like, no, you ain't. I was like, how old are you?
Even if based off whatever formula they're doing, that's their zone 2. It's like you're not going to get the cardiac output benefits.
No, it's too fast. It's way too fast. So, but they were receptive to it. But nonetheless,
like if all else fails and a formula is telling you that it should be that high, like don't go over 150.
Oh, for sure.
Do not go over.
You'll still get cardiac output benefits from. I'm having a hard time. Output benefits from that, even if you're slightly above your zone 2. But like you just don't want to spend a bunch of time in like that 150 to 165 range. You either want to be below that or above it to really develop. And that's kind of the bookends thing. The last point in the article that I wrote for the week is. If you've been just doing a ton of zone 1 and zone 2 work for a long time, and like you've seen, your times get faster and they've plateaued, and you've seen your resting heart rate come down and all of that kind of stuff, it's time to put some intensity into the system now and make it work faster, because all systems have capacity and they have power, and if you get to the point where you've really developed the capacity of the system and you have all the infrastructure built, well, now you have to make it work faster. And some of that in some zone 3 work will do that, but you just don't need much there. And so you have to get above it to really make the system work faster is the easiest way to say it. And then develop, push so if you look at like zone 1 and zone 2, back from a fuel perspective, like you're predominantly burning fat. And then there's more mixed fuel happening in zone 3, right? And so then above that, it's mostly carbohydrates. And so what we want to do is shift the line from the mixed fuel higher. And so that way we still burn fat, more fat than we would carbs, because we'll be able to recover from that more. It's convoluted kind of way to explain it, but we want to shift that line higher. So to shift that line higher, we have to push harder. And if we just continue in that weird zone 3 place, well, we get really good at burning carbs, but we don't push the line higher to help us utilize fuel and have the metabolic flexibility that we were talking about. I tried to explain that in a simple way. I think it makes sense. I don't know how well I did.
No, I think it makes sense. How much of a factor do you think consistency matters in all of this? And what does consistency mean?
I think it matters a ton, because we know that frequency of training, especially when it comes to aerobic development, is important. Right. So I know that different people say different amount of time for developing your energy systems. Some people say you need to be on the north side of 4 hours a week. Some people say 4 hours is fine. Some people say 2 hours is fine. I mean, it like you have to think about what your priorities and your goals are. Like
also what you're currently doing.
What you're currently doing matters, right? For sure. If like you're already training 8 hours a week and with your aerobically, like, well, you know what I mean? Yeah. But if you're only doing 30 minutes and you add another 30 minutes, of course that's going to help. So, what is consistency?
So I heard Nick Bear just had Lane Norton on his podcast.
Okay.
And so I threw this question at you because they got into this, and what a lot of people, it's like they were talking about like consistency is like the buzzword right now. You gotta be consistent, but like
fucking true.
Yes, but people, it's like, I don't think, what's the...
Did I send you the joke of the Frenchman talking about how consistent he was?
No.
About how he's like, talks about his alarm goes off at 6 a.m. and because I'm consistent, I hit snooze. And at 6:05 it goes off again. I snooze. He's like, but I'm consistent. It's like, that's fucking good.
Well, they talk about like how, like, I don't think that means what you think it means. Like, because people will talk about, like, right now it's like, oh, I did this thing for 30 days, this thing for 90 days. And it's like, Nick said to Lane, like, what does consistent mean to you? And it was like, they came to this agreement of like, it's like, don't talk to me about 90 days. Like that's all great. You got to start and you got to get a streak going. But like consistency is like,
but that's where continuity comes in.
Like decades. Like, and no one wants to hear that. No one wants to talk about that, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like, you compare yourself to people who you're like, I'd like to, whatever, like this, I'd like to have what they have. I'd like to be able to do what they do. Like, well, you have to be consistent, but not 90 days isn't going to get you there. Like,
well, no, I mean, for aerobically, you'll definitely see you'll see benefit.
Yes.
But from everything that I've read, like if you are consistent throughout a year of aerobic training and you get enough, it's going to, because it takes a fair amount of volume, it takes frequency, it takes consistency, and it takes you being able to get through all of the different training phases that require. So it's going to take like a year to have a decent aerobic system.
Yeah.
Like a year. And then your ceiling for it is huge. Like you can keep going and you have to keep going. And that's like one of the fucking stupid things that, another reason, well, I probably could have wrote about this, why people's endurance plateau. I forget who said it. One of the fucking, I think it was one of the CrossFit people or some shit, said about how like once you have your aerobic base built, you don't need to do, it's like, and that's so fucking stupid. Mitochondrial degradation is like, it happens.
I think that was the tactical barbell dude.
Oh, okay.
I think so.
That's fucking stupid. Yeah. Like that's so dumb. Like, yes, you do. You need to keep up with that because you will lose mitochondria. And that's like, what with the human body works that way? That you just like, you can stop doing something and you maintain the adaptation. Right. Like nothing works that way. That's such a dumb thing. But that's another thing is you have to, you know, especially with the way that we train, like things are going to get more emphasis at certain times of the year and less at other times of the year, but things can never completely go away. And I think that's probably another reason that people start to lose, they start to plateau, you know. Sequencing is important too. And I think that's probably something I could have written about, but I just didn't want to get too into the weeds. Yeah. And like the way that you sequence your training matters, you know. And I think we kind of mentioned that the last time we talked about how like, you know, you have your different base building phases and then how does your heart respond to these different types of training? And then neurologically, how much output can you give them and still recover? And all of those things have an interplay. And if you don't sequence things correctly, you won't make as much progress and you could plateau a lot faster. So let's say, I mean, for example, you know, you decide that if you don't have, now I'm trying to make up an example on the spot, but let's just say that you did like a bunch of like messy middle zone 3 work, and then you come back down to zone 2 work, and then you expect that zone 3 block or whatever to give you what you wanted to move forward, but you're out of sequence where it's like, I don't know. I think there is a case to be made to like moving towards specificity if you have a specific event, but like for most people, the sequence of laying a foundation matters. And so that's why I think that predominance of a lot of low and slow work, then layer on top of some intensity, then layer on top more intensity, and go from there seems to be the best way to approach it.
Yeah. So
I don't know. Especially for specifically for developing your conditioning, not necessarily fitness for a specific event is what I guess is what I'm trying to get at, which might be different. But for the most part, that's going to work. So I can give. I mean, you want me to give you other examples?
I don't know.
Other examples. No. You're not saying anything. You're just looking at me. You're looking at my feet, which is odd.
I don't really have anything to add to that. And
yeah,
it's just. I didn't take you for a sandals guy, you know.
Well, these are Jerusalem cruisers, friend. Look at that.
I don't know. They aren't. Those are the ones with the straps all over them.
You don't get no.
Pretty sure. Look it up.
Yeah.
Look it up.
They're fantastic. I got thong. I'm wearing a thong right now. Not like a thong, sandals. What if I was wearing a thong? I'd show you.
It's comfortable.
Is it?
I don't know. I've never worn it.
That's weird. I don't, yeah.
Anything else to add on that?
Well, I think modes matter. I think thinking
What do you
about like methods and types of exercise matter. I got a question the other day about. I wrote an email for Human Predator Pack Mule about why I think everyone's goal should be running, not necessarily if you're even going to run.
Mm-hmm.
So I think your goal should be running because if you can run, that means everything else is in place, right? So like you have good lower leg and hip and joint health. Your body weight's probably where it needs to be. You're strong enough to manage it. So if you make running the goal, you'll have all of these other things in line that'll allow you to do it well. And so, but I also do, from my experience, from coaching people, from all of the reading and research I've done, I think that low intensity running is the best way to develop your aerobic system. Mm-hmm. I really do. And so I got a question of, could you replace that with cycling? And I was like, if you want to be a cyclist, yes.
Some days.
Yeah.
I also think
no. He was saying like I was saying
altogether.
Running is the best way to do this, and he was saying, could you replace it with cycling? I was like, I've seen it work in the opposite. I've seen it work that running improves your heart rate and output during cycling. I haven't witnessed it go in the other direction. That being said, I don't know if there's a critical amount of volume that might help with that. But my thing is like you don't have to handle the plyometric aspect of things when you're cycling. You're also seated, so you're losing access to parts of your body that you could develop and contribute to energy production. You also, so I don't know, but I think that, and from logically and from what I know and from what I understand, I think it makes more sense if you just want to develop if you want to do the best thing, it would be get yourself to the point where you can run and then run consistently and sprinkle in the other things. Like for even example, for a lot of people, for the tactical populations that we work with, for the hunters that I work with, looking at running and having people run and then sprinkle in rucking so they're efficient under load and get the skill development from it, I think is the best course of action instead of vice versa. Because like if you run and you increase your strength and then you just do enough rucking to make yourself consistent under load, then you're going to be good, right? But then looking at that from a specificity standpoint, like I'm going to train someone that's going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and then a year later they're going to go to the Himalayas to hunt blue sheep. And so thinking about what they're going to need to be able to do that, like we have to get to the point where we're more specific with what we're doing, which sucks because they don't live anywhere near terrain. They live in fucking Arkansas. And so they will be on like an incline treadmill with their pack weight, with their day pack weight or whatever their load is, for like literally hours at a time. And so, but now at the stage that they're at, like we run, we ruck, there are other aerobic things that we do. I just think that looking at the different modalities and creating the biggest ceiling that you possibly can for yourself, I think that low intensity running is going to create the biggest ceiling that you possibly can. And then you can obviously sprinkle in the other ways and the things that you enjoy for developing your aerobic system. But I just think that low intensity running is the best way to do it.
I think it also like, let's say that you were going to train aerobically 4 to 6 sessions a week. When I originally trained for the Georgia Death Race, every day was running.
Oh, like, sure.
And then when I was getting ready for the Mountain Masochist 50 miler, I swapped out one day for just like low impact stuff here in the gym. And then even now, like I still occasionally run to like, it's almost like let's go make sure this still feels good. Like I've got it. But the majority, it's like, one, there's so much more intensity on the mats with jiu-jitsu that I'm just like, I don't want to pound my joints with running. But I feel like I've put more time on the rower than I have in years. And then I've been doing the bike, and then I get out maybe once a week and I run. And I feel like, not just feel like, I mean, I have like the heart rate data and stuff to say that seems to be maintaining.
Yeah.
So
I think, but you also have to think about tasks, right? So if you do something like, let's say right now your sport is jiu-jitsu.
If I was getting ready for, say, a 50 miler or,
But not even that. Like, let's just say that, we'll just use hunters or a tactical population as the example. Like, if you do most of your shit on your feet, like you should do your aerobic development mostly on your feet, you know, and then sprinkle in the other stuff, which I agree. It's like, I don't think most people need to be out running 4 to 5 to 6 times a week. No. But I mean, I think getting in 2 to 3 good runs and then filling the rest of your volume with other means would be the way to go.
That's my point.
Yeah, it's still your biggest driver, but then you don't beat the absolute piss out of yourself.
Bingo.
So, yeah.
I think there's benefits to putting in a period of more days a week running than not.
Oh, for sure.
But that's where I was saying as you're getting closer to the thing that you're getting ready for. But I don't think that for extensive periods of time that's necessary.
I think
I could make a case for why it could be a good thing, but it just depends on so many different factors.
I think it's your base builder, and then you got to get specific, right? So, like if you're going to climb, well, you have to do some kind of aerobic climbing. You know what I mean? If you're going to do something, you have to train your upper body aerobically as well. But I just think as a base builder, it's the best way to go. Like even, I had another question. It's like, well, you don't think that just rucking on terrain would do the same thing? I'm like, I don't. I really don't. I don't think it's as good. I mean, I did that for a long time. And for me personally, I've seen far better results from consistent running than I have from just going out and rucking on terrain all the time. So,
but results in running, but
in rucking and stuff too.
Were you struggling? Okay, that's what I'm saying. Were you struggling with things from a fitness perspective?
I wasn't struggling, but it was like things are easier now for sure. Like, and I'm also, I mean, if you look at all of the data and the research and what people say is like, I'm built to ruck. Like I can carry weight and I can do it all fucking day long. I'm not built to run. And I'm sure that has some kind of carryover too, where it's like you go do the thing that you're not necessarily as good at, and it brings up the things that you are good at. So, but I just think for everyone, it's typically going to be the best way to do it because of the plyometric component, of the ability to work at rates where you're, you have to produce energy faster, because like your stride rate and things are going to be increased. So you can be going faster at the same heart rates. You just even think about, for rowing and things like that, the way that the blood moves through your body is going to be different. You're not going to have the same kind of cadence and maintain the same kind of heart rates. So it's like, if you kind of logically break all of those kind of things down, it just seems like running makes the most sense as your base builder.
If you also think of it as like that bell curve, like the sliding scale of like easy, moderate, hard. It's like if the hardest that you go is just like a little faster with your ruck, like how fast can you go? You know what I mean? Like, but once you add in
you
running,
can't go any faster.
Yeah. But once you add in running, it's like when you can start to make, because you probably can't at first, is my point. When you can make running sustainable at an easy pace, then like that whole scale slides.
Oh, it does.
And then as long as, I mean, we've seen this, as long as you're doing your strength training, like you need very little rucking to then actually improve your rucking if you're running and you're lifting.
Until it's time to be consistent so you're ready for an event. Or until you're ready to be specific till you're ready for an event. But like when I first started running again, I could ruck faster with 50 pounds on my back and maintain a heart rate than I could run.
Yep.
So it's like the transfer is there, but there is a period, like for example, shifting towards summer, my plan is to hunt black bears and black-tailed deer. I think we talked about that last time. And so I'm going to be hiking through the mountains in California a lot. And so I'm going to do less running and more rucking on terrain, because it's like there is an element of like right now it's time to be more specific. But I've used running for I don't know how fucking long to really improve my general conditioning, and now it's time to get specific, and that's what's going to help me move forward. And I think that balance between, that's another thing I probably could have fucking written about, was getting the balance between general development and then specificity will also keep you from plateauing a lot as well.
Yep.
So
There's something I was going to say off that.
Don't know.
You said about at the very beginning of all this, you said something about, did you call it easy running? How did you describe it?
I would say easy running. Yeah.
And so I told you, like, I really liked that interview with Chris Henshaw on Mark Bell's, I think it's like Mark Bell's Powercast or whatever. Yeah. And I told you, he was talking about like the run walk intervals, but his were like all of your running is done at a specific pace. And so his wasn't like, walk for 4, run for 1, just keep your heart rate under this. It was like, hold this pace. As soon as your heart rate hits this upper limit, you're going to walk. As soon as it's to this, you're going to run again. And you're going to get right back to the
dynamic
same speed,
control.
Right?
Yeah.
And one of the questions that I think his name's Asima asked him was like, well, I've also done it basically the way that we've talked about, where I'm not going for a specific heart rate. I'm just like jogging easy, and that can be all different speeds. And I'm just trying to maybe hold an easy pace for a minute and then walk for a little bit, and more like interval, like true interval based, like based on time. He's like, is this better? And Chris basically was like, they both work. Like, yeah. So there's different ways that you can do it. And his case was, but the way that I'm going to have you do it is going to get your, essentially get your slow twitch fibers used to holding a certain pace and being able to more quickly turn over like which fibers are being recruited while the other ones are recovering, and being able to do it at those faster
that makes
paces.
Sense.
He's like, can you get to the same like end means doing it the way that you're talking about? Yes, but it's probably going to take longer.
And which for in most cases, unless you're working with a coach like that really understands it and can direct you, it's better to start slower. Yeah. Because when I say easy running, what I mean is avoiding the shit that we were talking about at the beginning of this podcast, where you feel like you need to run hard and you're in this sustainable pace, but it's not really doing anything for you, So you're not really developing your aerobic system. You're not really pushing the power of any of the systems. You're just kind of in a weird place that's overdeveloping your glycolytic system, burning carbs. You're getting really good at that. And that's why there's a lot of people that can go out and they're really good at running 3 miles and then they're fucked after that. You know what I mean? Because they didn't do enough volume or enough low intensity work to develop their oxidative capacity to burn fat. And so therefore they can't push any harder because they don't have the ability to recover from hard intervals, because they're not going to be able to go out and train them. So if you would ask someone that spent all of their time training and doing like zone 3 runs, you'd say, let's go do some VO2 max intervals. And they'd get through 1 or 2 and they would be fucked because they just would not be able to recover from it, because their heart rate's just going to stay up because they don't have the capacity to switch back down, both from a neurological standpoint and from a fuel standpoint. They're just going to keep burning through those carbs, and then they're going to fatigue really fast, and then they're fucked. So I don't know if that had anything to do with what we were talking about, but that's where my brain went. So
I think it all fits.
Yeah.
There's one other thing on that. Well, actually, it was something that you said offline to me, like where you were like, I thought you were saying that you did a lot of your easy runs like in the into the 150s. And I was like, no. And I went back and I found there's a reel on the YouTube channel that we post these to, where I'm like, I break down like what an easy run is. And in that I was saying like, and I was like, oh yeah, I mean, it was what I said to you, but like basically, even within an easy run, like I say in that, like I still spend, because you're like, oh, it's easy, the whole thing could just be done at one pace. But I still spend the first 10 to 15 minutes, like at that time, what Garmin was saying was my zone 1 was like, I would stay super low. Like,
oh, sure.
Like running in the mid 130s. And I really, like, even the first like 10 minutes of that, I would try and stay in the upper 120s, low 130s. And then I would, once I got past that first 10 to 15 minutes, then I would just try and keep it below 143 the whole time. So, but even that, like, just point being, like, you could do it. That was based off of like, that was mixing the zones that Garmin gave me. And then Maffetone 180 minus your age was the 143. But it doesn't mean that you necessarily just come out and go right up to that heart rate and then hold that. Like, you want to start super easy and give your aerobic system time to warm up, even for an easy run. You have to bring it online, or otherwise you will see your heart rate just fucking jump as soon as you go. The way that I do is I do run walk intervals first. So I run for
jog for 30 seconds, walk for 30 seconds, depending on how long the run is or how intense the run might be. Sometimes I do that for 5 minutes. Sometimes I do it for 10. And then I go into a slow, easy run to finish off the warm up. But all of my warm ups take 15 minutes before I even start thinking about running harder. So, yeah.
That's one thing where I think a lot of, like this morning in jiu-jitsu, the dude that was asked to lead the warm-ups, he was like, got it. And then it was just like, he just like broke out. He just broke out into like I wouldn't call it a sprint, but because, we're on a mat, so it's like a constant turn basically. But it was like, he was like, we're going to go hard this morning. And I'm just kind of like, I know that you don't know, so it doesn't really matter. Plus it's only going to be for 2 minutes. So we're not really getting much of anything out of this.
Sure.
But it was just like, man, you're just taking people from rest to like keep up. Yeah. To keep up. And it's like, you are just creating a debt right off the bat that like, this is not giving anyone what they need.
No, don't create that. No. Anyway, I'll let you guys know when the Only Feet page is up. So just keep a look out.
What do you think about charging? Just
$5 a month.
$5 a month. Okay.
Reasonable.
Yeah. It's not bad.
For entertainment. Come on.
All right.
I mean, I'm not doing any risque stuff. Like, unless somebody's like, hey, how about this much money? And then I'll be like,
I was going to say, where do you draw the line with the financial?
It's probably not going to take that much money.
All right.
See ya.